Do you have the right to record the police in public? On this episode of The Uprising, we'll talk about an important new court case that discusses just that issue.
LibertyNation.com. They're the resistance, but we are the uprising. With Scott Cosenza and Tim Donner.
There's not going to be a President Donald Trump.
Hey, a president! Can you believe it?
I love the poorly educated.
The voters have guaranteed themselves slavery, economic disaster.
I can't believe I'm losing to this guy.
You could put half of Trump's supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables.
Lordy, I hope there are tapes.
I have never met with Russians.
Putin is continuing to advance into Korea.
Gee, it's amazing that the Russians have been able to influence 4 special elections.
Hello, this is Scott Cosenza from LibertyNation.com, and I'm joined today by Tess, Lynne, also from LibertyNation.com, and we're here to discuss this Third Circuit Court of Appeals case from the federal courts that Tess wrote about for Liberty Nation, and it talks about the right of citizens to record the police. Hi, Tess.
Hi, Scott. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. And I enjoyed reading your piece, and I thought this has been a topic that interests me generally, and specifically because I used to practice law in the Third Circuit, and I'm interested in free speech issues. So I have been a sort of keen observer of this case, and I think that because I'm an attorney, I'll give the listeners just a bit of a background about how the sort of federal circuit courts of appeals system works before we sort of get into the meat of it, if that's okay.
That sounds great.
Okay, so if somebody files a suit, the federal system is divided up into 13 circuits, and if you live in, for instance, Philadelphia, and you file suit in federal court and you don't like the result of that decision, you then can appeal that decision. And the geographic area which covers Philadelphia, which is where the plaintiffs in this case are, is the Third Circuit. Now, if the Third Circuit issues a ruling, that ruling then becomes the law for all of the people who live within that Third Circuit. But if you live in California, for instance, you live in the Ninth Circuit, and unless and until the Ninth Circuit adopts that rule in an area of unsettled law, or an area that the Supreme Court hasn't issued a ruling on, that rule or law may be different in that Ninth Circuit, because when the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals judges hear a case, they are not bound by what the Third Circuit Court of Appeals judges said. They are often influenced by it and may be persuaded by it, but they're not legally bound to follow the same course of action. And in fact, the way many cases reach the United States Supreme Court is what's called settling a split in the circuits. So if that is in fact the case, and there was a different law in the Ninth Circuit versus in the Third Circuit, you might imagine that's an untenable solution in our system. And so the Supreme Court will often take a case in order to settle those differences. So with that as a sort of base, let's talk about these 2 people who were arrested for filming the police. Can you fill us in on the details for that, Tess?
Sure. The first one was in 2012 with a well-known local police watchdog group person, Amanda Gracci. She was at the protest filming the arrest of one of the protesters when an officer allegedly pinned her against a pillar and stopped her from recording. In the other one, about a year later, a Temple University sophomore, Richard Fields, he used his cell phone to record the police breaking up a house party. And in that one, the officer, told him to stop, and he refused. And the officer told him to leave, and he refused. So he was arrested for obstructing highway and other public passages. The officer actually went through his cell phone and looked at his personal photographs and videos too. That's quite of an issue.
Awfully outrageous. Certainly nothing new from the Philadelphia Police Department. For those of us who have a more intimate understanding of how they operate, they are They are a department that doesn't typically bother with the niceties of recognizing the constitutional rights of those they mean to police. I can tell you that firsthand. So these people who were unjustly arrested, they fought those arrests, right? And what happened in the lower court?
Well, in the appeal,
before we get to the appeal, to the district court level, this case made national headlines because U.S. District Judge Mark Kearney, when he made his ruling, he ruled against both Geraci and Fields, and he said that the police had qualified immunity in both instances, which means that they could not proceed against them in a lawsuit. And then he went out of his way in sort of an issue that wasn't really litigated by the defendants, or in this case, I guess maybe they were the plaintiffs. And he said that they didn't have the First Amendment right to actually film the police, and he said he didn't have the right to do so because they weren't protesting and didn't plan at the time on necessarily publishing what they were recording. It was a seemingly bizarre ruling for those of us who follow the law in this area, and inconsistent massively with the rulings that have come down in other circuit courts of appeal. So they appealed to the Third Circuit, and we have news from that came out this week. And what went on in the Third Circuit, Tess? Well,
they won the appeal. It was found that it is the Constitution protects citizens' rights to record police activity and things like that. And one of the judges, Judge Thomas Ambrose, even said that with citizens' videos, it provides a different perspective, and it also helps in cases where police officers maybe are not wearing their body camera, or they just choose to withhold any footage that has been filmed. So they won that, but then it came down to the qualified immunity, which you probably can explain that a little bit better.
Sure, I'll just mention briefly that it has to do with that police officers performing certain duties on their job are immune from lawsuit, basically. And it's a key factor if you are accusing the police of doing something wrong. The idea is that if they knew they shouldn't have been doing it, then you can overcome the qualified immunity. But if they didn't know that they shouldn't have been doing it, then they are, in such an instance, immune from suit.
Right, because in this case, they said that it wasn't clearly established that citizens have a right to record. But one judge disagreed with that, especially since the police department in 2011 sent out a memo to the entire force telling them about the right to record, and another more detailed one a year later, including making it a requirement for the sergeants to read it aloud at roll call and have them sign it. And this was all done before these two individuals were detained or arrested.
Yeah, it's somewhat surprising that the other... So it was a 3-judge panel, which is typical for the Third Circuit, for a circuit court hearing, a court of appeals hearing. And one of the judges, Judge Nygaard, he disagreed with his brother justices on the... So just so everybody's clear, it was unanimous with respect... The ruling from the court was unanimous with respect to whether they had the right to record. The court, I think it was a 26-page opinion, and I was encouraged to see early on they referenced the famous Rodney King beating and its recording, and the court... So, there was no wavering about whether or not that right existed. There was just wavering about whether or not the police should have known that the right existed. And Judge Nygaard was the lone judge on the panel who said absolutely they should have known, and qualified immunity should not be present here. He gave a real champion's defense of the right to record and against the police here. Is this the end of the road for these litigants? Are they done now, or what's the possibility here for them to continue on with their quest to see that they are righted for the violation of their rights that the Philadelphia police committed?
I haven't seen anything, any updates that they're going to proceed any further necessarily. I know that it had made mention that they're looking into it.
Right.
But they did win on one, on an important factor, the right to record.
Right.
So
every American now, in every circuit that has examined it, well, actually, I think we can say every American has the right to record unless and until some circuit says they don't, and then I think that the Supreme Court would be forced to take the case. But is there any serious that you know of, sort of on the legal landscape argument that this is not a right? I mean, is there any real threat that I think that if I can read the list, it's the 1st, 5th, 7th, 9th, and 11th circuits that have all examined this case, this issue, and published opinions. And all of those circuit courts that have examined it have stated unequivocally, this right exists. You have the right to record police in public while they do their duty, providing you don't illegally interfere with them. You can't put your iPhone in their face or anything like that. But if if you have the legal right to stand on a sidewalk and watch what they're doing, you have the legal right to stand on the sidewalk and watch what they're doing while recording them doing it. That's the current status of the law. Do you see any circuits going the other way in the future, or what's your opinion on this?
I don't think it will go the other way in the future because there's too much public outcry for, so many different police departments are getting body cameras just not only to protect the people that they come in contact with, but also to protect themselves from being, accused of
wrongdoing,
hurting someone,
sure.
Right.
Yeah,
So
it seems like if you're a good cop, you have not only nothing to fear from being recorded, but you probably would want to be recorded because it prevents if somebody lies and makes an allegation that you behaved inappropriately, you have the video for your defense, right? If you're a good cop. But if you're a shady cop and you like to beat people or pull them over for no reason, like the cops of Philadelphia, well, then it becomes a problem for you to be monitored.
Right. And when I worked in California as a reporter, I worked with the local police and sheriff's department a lot, and they were getting body cams for the first time. And I talked to them, and they said that it really helped because a lot of times when someone that they've arrested or detained starts becoming agitated or out of control, as soon as they mention that they're being recorded, a lot of times it diffuses the situation. So it can work both ways, Okay. As long as people are respecting the distance that, police barricades or whatever, and not getting in the way or putting themselves in danger, they have the right to record.
Okay. Well, thanks so much for your reporting on this, Tess, and we'll look forward to seeing more of your pieces on LibertyNation.com, and look to LibertyNation.com for more on the free speech issue, which we cover vigorously. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Scott.
Ciao.
LibertyNation.com. They are the resistance, but we are the uprising.